The sky above Orlus's prime was made of clear crystal shields, giving the Grand Council chamber a soft silver glow. It was the capital of the Galactic Union, a place where leaders of many species came together to talk, solve problems, and make decisions for the galaxy. The council chamber stood at the center of the floating city like a giant star-shaped fortress. Every corridor was clean, bright, and filled with quiet steps of soldiers, envoys, and observers from hundreds of star systems inside the main hall. Long, curved rows of seats were filled with alien representatives. Some were tall and thin with glass-like skin. Others were covered in fur with glowing eyes. Some had hard shells and many arms, tapping softly on metal desks as they waited. All of them had come because a shadow had spread across the stars. A force known as the Drek Swarm was moving through the outer sectors, conquering colonies one by one. Their ships were fast, and their warriors were merciless. Many species had already lost their homes to this growing threat. The council had called for an emergency assembly. The chamber was full of tension. Even the air felt heavy. The Drek were not a simple enemy. They were a storm. No single world could stop them alone. Every race was afraid, but no one wanted to admit it aloud. A voice echoed across the chamber. It came from the council speaker, an elder being with silver skin and soft lights on its arms. It lifted its long fingers to silence the room. We are gathered to discuss the advance of the Drek Swarm. We must decide what action the Union will take. Many worlds are falling. We cannot delay. Many voices rose in response. Some were sharp. Some were shaking. One envoy from a peaceful farming world said their people had no soldiers and begged for protection. Another from a mining colony said their ships were too old to fight. A warrior race offered to lend some troops, but said they could not defend everyone. Every word in that chamber carried the same weight of fear. The Drek were moving fast, and no one knew who would be next. At that moment, the main doors opened. A group entered with a steady rhythm. They wore black uniforms with a single white emblem on the chest. Their steps made no sound, but their presence filled the entire room. The humans had arrived. Humanity was not the oldest race in the Union. They were not the richest, nor the most advanced. But their history carried a reputation. They came from a world that had once been known as a death world, a place where survival was hard. They had built their strength through struggle, not comfort. Other species respected them, but also feared the quiet intensity that came with their soldiers. The human delegation walked in straight lines. At the front was Captain Rian. His uniform was clean and his posture upright. He did not smile. He did not look around. His eyes moved slowly, scanning the chamber. Behind him followed 6 other human soldiers, each moving as one. They did not speak a single word. The council chamber grew quieter as they passed. Many species watched them closely. Even the Drek envoy, who had already arrived and waited at one end of the room, narrowed its crimson eyes. The Drek were proud and brutal. They considered most species weak. But they did not underestimate humans. They had met them in skirmishes before, and those fights had not ended easily. The council speaker gave a formal nod. "Welcome, Terran. Delegation. Please take your seats." Rian and his unit sat in perfect silence. The other envoys whispered among themselves. Some felt relief. Some felt unease. Humans always carried a sense of something controlled but dangerous beneath the surface. The speaker began the meeting. The Drek Swarm has advanced to the Torsen Belt. They have already taken 6 stations and 3 colonies in the last 10 days. Our defensive fleets are stretched thin. We have received distress calls from Luma Ridge, Corin Reach, and Vesta Line. We need a united response. A Drek envoy stood. It was a tall creature with sharp skin ridges and black armor plates. Its long mouth curled in a grin that held no kindness. It spoke in a heavy tone. "You speak of distress. You speak of loss. But you forget one thing. You are weak. The swarm is strong. You should surrender the border systems and kneel. It will save lives." Murmurs filled the chamber. The Drek envoy enjoyed their fear. Its grin widened. You cannot win. Your fleets fall like leaves in a storm. Your soldiers run when they see us. The envoy pointed toward the humans. Even your Deathworld children cannot stop the swarm. No one expected an immediate reply from the humans. Rion stayed silent. His team did not move. They simply watched. The council speaker raised a hand and said, "This is a place for talks, not threats." The Drek envoy's voice lowered, colder and more direct. Luma Ridge will burn next. We have already marked it. The farms, the children, the sky, all of it will be ash. Something subtle happened at that moment. A shift that only a few noticed. Rion's head tilted slightly to the left. To most in the room, it looked like nothing. A small, meaningless movement. But to the human soldiers, it meant everything. It was a signal. Not to attack, not to speak, but to prepare. Every human in that line straightened their back. Their breathing slowed in perfect rhythm. Their gaze sharpened like blades. The chamber did not understand it yet. But something old and dangerous had stirred in that quiet gesture. The other alien envoys felt the air change. A cold weight spread through the room. The sound of whispering stopped. Even the Drek envoy paused for a fraction of a second as its predatory instincts reacted to the presence of something it did not fully understand. Rion's face did not show anger. It showed focus. Humans had lost many things across history. But when a threat touched something personal, something close to their people, a switch flipped inside them. It was not loud. It was not chaotic. It was cold and steady like a hunter's heartbeat. The council speaker tried to continue. "We must discuss strategy. Please, stay calm." But many could not stay calm. One envoy leaned toward another and whispered, "Do you feel that?" Another nodded without words. It was a silent tension that spread like a wave. The Drek envoy narrowed its eyes again. It saw no rage, no raised weapons. It only saw stillness. The kind of stillness that belonged to predators before they strike. For the next hour, the council continued to talk about possible plans. But everyone in that room felt something had changed. The humans remained silent through most of it. They listened to the maps, the numbers, the reports, but their minds were already somewhere else. Luma Ridge was a farming colony, far from the core worlds. It was quiet and peaceful. Many human families lived there. Children grew crops under 2 suns. Those families had no warships. They trusted the Union for protection. Rion had grown up not far from Luma Ridge. He remembered stories of its fields and rivers. To the council, it was just another outpost on a long list of threatened worlds. To him, it was home to people he had sworn to protect. The council speaker finally turned to the human delegation. "Captain Rion, will the Terran Command commit forces to defend the border?" Rion stood slowly. His boots made a soft sound against the polished floor. Every eye turned toward him. His voice was calm, low, and clear. "Luma Ridge will not fall." Some envoys sighed with relief. Others whispered again. They had seen humans fight before. When humans said something like that, it was not empty talk. The Drek envoy laughed, a dry and rough sound. "You will die with him." Rion did not answer. He did not have to. The look in his eyes was enough. It was not pride. It was not rage. It was certainty. The speaker moved on, but the chamber remained under the weight of what had just happened. The humans had not drawn a single weapon. They had not raised their voices. Yet everyone in that room understood that something had been set in motion. Humanity's reputation was not built on speeches. It was built on what happened after someone crossed a line, outside the chamber. The wind of Orlis Prime brushed softly against the city walls. The sky seemed calm, but beneath that calm surface, storms were gathering across the galaxy. The Drek believed their swarm was unstoppable. Many species believed resistance would end in defeat. But the humans were different. When someone threatened their home, their switch flipped without warning. Inside the council chamber, the meeting ended with promises, worries, and fear. The envoys walked away, speaking in quiet tones. But the human soldiers walked out exactly as they had walked in silence and with purpose. In the corridors outside, one of Rian's soldiers spoke softly to him. "Orders." Rian looked at the soldier. "Prepare." Soldier nodded once. No more words were needed. They had all felt the moment the Drek envoy spoke of Luma Ridge. It was the moment that Predator trigger had been pulled. The galaxy would soon learn what that meant. The sky over Aurelus Prime was calm the next morning, but the council chamber no longer felt the same. The previous day had left a mark on everyone who had been present. Rumors spread fast through the halls of the Union capital. Every envoy, soldier, and clerk spoke about the silent moment when the human captain tilted his head. No one fully understood what it meant, but they all remembered the feeling that came with it. It was like standing near a quiet storm that could break open at any second inside the human embassy building. A small and simple structure made of dark alloy, Captain Rion stood in front of a wide display screen. The screen showed Luma Ridge, a peaceful farming colony with open fields, tall silver wheat, and bright twin suns shining above. Children played near the irrigation lines. Farmers worked with old tractors. There were no warships near that colony. The closest military defense was 3 systems away. If the Drek attacked, the colony would fall in hours. Rian studied the data with sharp focus. His second-in-command, Mira, entered the room. She was calm and quiet like the rest of the human soldiers. She handed Rian a tablet with updated reports. "Drek fleet movement detected along the outer route," she said. "They are not trying to hide. Their lead ships will reach Luma Ridge in 4 days." Rian did not move. He kept looking at the screen. Mira waited for his answer. Finally, he spoke in a firm tone. "Then we move into night." Mira nodded. She did not ask if they had permission. She did not ask if the council had agreed. Human forces never waited for slow debates when their own people were in danger. They acted. That was one of the reasons other species feared them. At the same time, across the city, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Representatives argued about borders, supplies, and fleet distribution. Many envoys wanted to protect their own worlds first. Some called for retreat. Others demanded a united army. The speaker tried to hold order, but it was like trying to stop a river with bare hands, inside one of the council's side chambers. The Drek envoy met with a small group of observers. Its black armor shined under the pale lights. Its sharp eyes showed no fear. The Drek believed this war was already won. Their commander grinned as it spoke to the gathered crowd. "The border worlds are weak. We will take them." "The humans can do nothing," one observer asked. "Are you not worried about Terran forces? They are known to fight harder than others." The Drek envoy laughed coldly. "We have broken stronger enemies. Humans are just one more prey." Back at the human embassy, soldiers moved with quiet speed. Their base was not large, but every corner was full of precision. Soldiers packed equipment into black crates. Drones were checked and fueled. Weapons were cleaned with patient hands. Communication lines were opened with their main fleet in deep space. Orders were sent without raising a single voice. Mira walked down the hallway and entered the operations room. Rows of soldiers were working on different tasks. They did not talk about fear. They did not talk about odds. They worked because they knew what needed to be done. A young soldier named Aaron looked up from his console. "We will be ready in 6 hours." Mira nodded. "Good captain wants no delays." Aaron went back to work. His hands moved fast, but steady. He had grown up on a mining station where survival meant learning to act without panic. Like many humans, his strength was not in power alone. It was in focus and unity. Outside the embassy, other species watched the human soldiers prepare. A tall insectoid observer whispered to its companion, "They do not hesitate. They never do." The companion answered softly. At the same time, Rian walked toward the council chamber once again. The council speaker had called an urgent session. Many envoys were already inside when he arrived. Some stood in groups, arguing. Others sat in silence, worried. When the human captain entered, the room fell quiet just like before. The speaker turned to him. Captain Rian, the Council has not yet agreed to military action. Some members fear that open war will bring more destruction. We are still discussing options. Ryan's steps were slow and controlled as he reached the center of the chamber. His voice was steady. The Drek will not wait for your discussion. They are already moving. If we do not act, Luma Ridge will fall. A merchant envoy raised its thin arms. Why risk your fleet for one small colony? We should protect the core worlds first. Rian looked at the envoy. Because it is not just a colony. It is our people. We do not abandon our own. The room grew tense. Many envoys whispered again. Some thought the humans were reckless. Others secretly admired their loyalty. The speaker sighed and rubbed its silver forehead. Captain, we need time. Rian replied with the same calm tone. You have time. We are not asking for permission. We are informing you of our action. Those words carried a quiet power. Most species would never defy the Council. Humans simply did not need to. They acted based on their code. That code was older than their place in the Union. It was carved into their history through countless wars and struggles. The Drek envoy leaned forward with a grin. You think your little fleet will stop the swarm? You will break like the rest. Rian turned his head slightly toward the Drek envoy. His eyes did not show fear. They showed something else. Something the Drek had seen before in human soldiers on the battlefield. It was a promise. We will not break. The council session ended without agreement. Many envoys rushed to their quarters to protect their own borders. The humans walked out together in silence. Every step they took echoed through the marble hallways. Outside, ships were already waiting on the launch platforms. The Terran fleet stationed in nearby space was not the largest in the Union, but it was disciplined, fast, and designed for hard fights. The flagship Resolute waited in orbit. It was a dark gray vessel, with sharp edges and heavy armor. Two smaller escort ships floated beside it like silent guards. When Rian arrived at the docking bay, every crew member stood ready. The boarding ramp lowered with a hiss. Mira met him at the entrance. Fleet reports all systems ready. We can leave at any moment. Rian gave a single nod. Launch in 30 minutes. Mira relayed the order through her CUM device. No loud announcements echoed through the ship. Instead, every crew member received clear and silent instructions. Engines warmed up. Shields activated. Weapons went through final checks. From the observation deck of the Council Tower, alien envoys watched the Terran fleet rise from the planet. One of them spoke softly. They move as if the decision was made long ago. Another replied, for them it was. The fleet moved away from Orlis Prime and entered the void of space. Their formation was tight and silent. No unnecessary signals were sent. No warnings were given to the Drek. Terrans believed in speed and precision. They had no interest in empty words. Inside the bridge of the Resolute, the lights were dim. Officers monitored the surrounding space. Mira stood at the tactical console. Rian stood in the center of the bridge. On the large display, the route to Luma Ridge was shown in red. Drek fleet movements were marked in sharp blue. They were already close. The humans had to arrive before the enemy struck. Aaron's voice came from the sensor station. Drek fleet strength confirmed 15 attack ships, 2 carriers. No sign of reinforcement yet. Mira calculated the numbers quickly. We have 8 ships. They outnumber us. Rian did not flinch. Then we make it count. The crew understood exactly what that meant. Terran's strategy was built around striking fast and hitting hard. They did not rely on overwhelming numbers. They relied on precision, discipline, and the will to fight until the end. The journey through the void was long and silent. The only sound inside the bridge was the soft hum of the engines and the clicking of consoles. Many crew members thought about Luma Ridge. Some had family there. Others had trained near that world. But none of them let emotion control their actions. They let it sharpen their focus instead. Far ahead, the Drek fleet moved without fear. The Drek commander believed the humans would hesitate like the Council. It believed the colony would be easy prey. That arrogance would cost them. As the Terran fleet closed in, Rian gave his next order. Activate silent approach. Prepare ground drop units. Mira nodded and spoke into the com. Silent mode engaged. Drop units on standby. The lights on the ship dimmed further. Engines shifted to a low signal mode. To the Drek sensors, it would look like empty space. Terran fleets had mastered the art of silent movement. It was one of the many reasons enemies feared them. Hours passed. The twin suns of Luma Ridge appeared on the display. The colony was peaceful, unaware that a storm was coming. Farmers worked in the fields. Children played outside the domes. The people did not know that Drek ships were less than a day away. They did not know that help was already on the way. Inside the ship, drop troopers checked their gear one last time. Each wore black combat armor with no bright colors. Each carried their rifle like an extension of their body. They did not talk about victory or death. They talked about objectives. Clear, simple, direct. Mira walked past them and checked the readiness boards. Green lights covered every line. Rian entered the bay. Every soldier turned toward him without needing a command. He looked at them with a calm expression. We protect our own. That was all he said. It was all they needed. The fleet adjusted its position above the colony. They would fortify Luma Ridge and face. Luma Ridge woke up to the sound of soft wind moving through its wide farming fields. The twin suns rose slowly above the horizon, turning the sky golden. Farmers stepped out of their homes. Children ran toward the green valleys. And the colony carried the same quiet rhythm it always had. No one in the fields knew that far above them, hidden in the cold black of space, a Terran fleet had arrived. The flagship Resolute hovered in silent orbit. Its engines stayed low. Its signals were hidden. No light escaped its surface. Around it, 7 other Terran ships formed a defensive circle. Inside each ship, soldiers and pilots were ready. They waited with the patience of hunter's captain. Rian stood on the command deck of the Resolute. The large main screen showed a star map with blue and red markings. The Drek fleet had just crossed the outer edge of the system. They were coming fast. Their formations spread wide like a net. It was the same tactic they had used on other colonies. The Drek commander believed this would be an easy hunt. Mira stood beside Rian at the tactical station. Their lead ships will be in orbit in 3 hours, she said. Rian gave a single nod. Keep silent approach until the last moment. We strike on our time. The soldiers around them moved with quiet focus. No one shouted. No one panicked. Every order was short and clear. The humans had prepared for this moment since the council chamber. Their decision had been made the second the Drek envoy spoke the name. Luma Ridge. They would not let their colony fall. On the planet below, the governor of Luma Ridge, an older woman named Lyra, received the first encrypted message from orbit. She was standing near the control tower when the alert flashed on her wrist console. She read the message twice, her eyes steady. Then she spoke to the local security team. It is Terran Fleet Command. They are here. The security team straightened their backs. One of them asked, "Are we under attack?" Lyra answered in a calm voice, "Not yet, but the Drek are coming. We will not run." Within minutes, the colony switched from peaceful mode to emergency defense mode. The farmers moved into safe shelters. The children were gathered inside reinforced domes. Medical units were prepared in the underground sections. Terran ground soldiers began landing in small black dropships, each one fast and quiet. They spread across the colony, setting up mobile shields and sensor towers. The people of Luma Ridge watched the soldiers with wide eyes. They were not shouting. They were not rushing. They moved like a single body. Every step in action was controlled. That calm gave the colonists courage. If these soldiers did not fear the Drek, then maybe they did not have to either. At the edge of the colony, Aaron and his squad secured the main transport road. They set up 3 shield generators and connected them with energy cables. A young colonist approached him and asked, "Will they really come?" Aaron looked at the horizon. His voice stayed steady. "Yes, but we will be ready." High above the planet, the Drek fleet drew closer. Their ships were shaped like dark blades. Each carried heavy weapons and a swarm of fighters. They had destroyed many colonies before. They had never faced Terrans in full defense of their own world. They were about to learn the difference. Mira monitored the sensor feed. Drek fleet, now in visual range. 15 ships confirmed. Carrier bays are opening. Rion narrowed his eyes. Prepare strike teams. Ground units hold positions. The Resolute shifted slightly, turning its nose toward the incoming fleet. The escort ships moved in formation. Every weapon system came online at the same moment. No one on the Terran side shouted a single word. They had trained for this exact moment over and over. It was not chaos. It was a pattern. The Drek commander on the lead ship laughed as it saw the small number of human ships. Only 8. They are fools to face us, it said to its crew. Its second officer nodded with a cruel smile. This will be quick. The Drek ships accelerated toward orbit. They did not send a warning. They did not negotiate. They came like predators ready to tear apart another weak colony. They expected fear. They expected panic. What they found instead was silence. The first Terran strike came without a sound. 2 Terran destroyers appeared on the Drek flank, their engines flaring to life. They opened fire with rail cannons that burned through the dark. The Drek fleet staggered in surprise as the first shells tore through their lead fighters. Their formation broke for a moment. That moment was all Terrans needed. Rian gave his next order. All ships engage. The Terran fleet surged forward with sudden speed. Every ship moved like it was part of a single living thing. They did not waste fire on wide shots. They targeted key systems. Engines, weapons, bridges. The Drek expected a defensive battle. Instead, they met a calculated strike. Mira called out from the console. Carrier 1 crippled. Destroyer 3 on our left flank. Rian adjusted the formation with one hand on the command rail. Redirect shield wing, lock on second carrier. The Resolute fired again. Its rail cannons hit the second carrier's engine block, sending fire across its hull. Drek fighters swarmed forward, but Terran point defenses lit up the sky with clean, sharp bursts. The air above Luma Ridge began to shake with the power of 2 fleets colliding. On the planet, the ground units felt the vibrations through the soil. Lyra stood in the control tower, watching the red lights on the sky map. They are here, she whispered. Aaron and his squad crouched behind the shield line. Dropships with Drek soldiers were descending through the clouds. Their engines screamed as they fell toward the colony. Aaron lifted his rifle and checked the energy level. His squad did the same. They waited until the dropships broke through the atmosphere. Myra's voice came through their helmets. Ground units, first wave inbound, Aaron replied. Ready? The first Drek dropship hit the outer field. It was shaped like a claw. Its doors opened and tall Drek soldiers poured out. They had hard gray skin and armor plates. Their weapons hummed with blue energy. They roared as they charged forward. The Terran soldiers did not roar back. They raised their weapons and fired in precise bursts. Every shot found its mark. The Drek expected a wall of chaos. Instead, they faced cold precision. Their front line fell before it reached the first shield. More Drek dropships came down. The air filled with the sound of engines and gunfire. The Terran lines held steady. No one broke formation. They moved like hunters in the dark. Rian kept his attention on both the space and ground battles. He spoke to Mira. Keep our focus on their carriers. If we cut their transport, we win the ground. Understood, Mira replied. The Resolute launched a full strike on the second Drek carrier. Its escort ships moved in perfect alignment, cutting through the swarm. Explosions flashed across the Drek fleet. For the first time, their commander frowned. This was not going according to plan. On the ground, Aaron's squad pushed forward to secure the western road. Smoke rose from burning Drek dropships. One soldier called out, "Right flank clear." Aaron gave the next order. Advance to the line. Our movements were clean and fast. Behind them, the colony's shield generators hummed louder, creating a glowing barrier that protected the civilians. Inside the safe domes, children watched through reinforced glass as Terran soldiers fought with silent determination. Lyra stood in the tower, speaking to her people through the comms. "Stay calm. The Terran defense is holding. This is our home. We stand together." The Drek commander ordered its main ships to push harder. "Break their fleet," it shouted to its crew. But the Terrans had already adapted. Rian gave the next command. "Redirect fire. Hit their command ship." "Ah!" Mira nodded. "Target locked." The Resolute fired a focused rail shot that struck the Drek flagship near its front armor. The shockwave traveled through its hull, tearing through several decks. Alarms rang on the Drek bridge. Their confidence began to shake. The Drek commander bared its sharp teeth. They should have run. Rian looked at the burning Drek flagship on his screen. His voice stayed cold. "We never run." The battle turned fierce in orbit. 2 Terran ships took heavy damage, but they did not break formation. Their crews kept fighting, even as fire spread across their decks. The Drek fleet, built on fast strikes and fear, was not used to enemies who stood their ground. On the ground, the Drek wave tried to break through the shield line again. Aaron led his squad forward. He moved like a shadow among the smoke. Every step was steady. Every shot was controlled. The Drek pushed hard, but the humans pushed harder as the sun began to set on Luma Ridge. The colony fields burned with the light of battle. The humans did not waver. Their trigger had been pulled. This was no longer a meeting room debate. This was survival, and humans knew survival better than anyone. Yon's voice echoed through the comm lines. "Hold the line." Mira watched the tactical screen. "The Drek fleet is losing coordination." Rian gave one final order. "Push." The Terran fleet advanced like a storm. Their cannons tore through Drek hulls. Their fighters cut through the swarm like knives. The Drek commander stared at the burning ships around it. For the first time in its life, it felt something it did not understand. The council chamber was no longer a place of calm debate. A heavy silence filled the air. The Drek envoy had laughed only moments ago, but that sound had been swallowed by something far stronger. Every species in the chamber could feel it, a shift so sharp and quiet that it made the walls seem to hold their breath. The humans stood still, but there was nothing soft or uncertain about them now. They were not showing rage, not shouting, not moving without purpose. Their presence was like the moment before a storm breaks. Rian was at the center of the human unit. His hands were relaxed at his sides, but his eyes were fixed on the Drek commander. That gaze had no fear, no hesitation. Around him, the rest of the unit stood in the same exact way, as if every breath was part of a larger plan. The council guards were uneasy. They had never seen humans act like this before. They had seen them as explorers, as diplomats, as builders. But now, they were seeing something else entirely. The Drek commander still tried to appear confident. He raised his crest and gave a sneer, waving one of his clawed hands. "You think this show of silence will scare me?" he said. His voice echoed around the chamber. But even as he spoke, a tremor in his words betrayed him. The humans were not responding. And that was more frightening than if they had shouted. One of the council guards whispered to another, "What are they doing?" The other guard shook his head. "I don't know, but it feels wrong to stand near them." The Drek soldiers who had accompanied their commander were used to dominance. They had entered the chamber with loud footsteps and weapons in hand. But now their steps were lighter. Their claws clicked on the polished floor with an uneasy rhythm. They could feel something dangerous in the air, even if they could not see it. Then something small happened. Rian tilted his head slightly to the right. It was a small motion, almost invisible, but it rippled through the human unit like a silent command. Shoulders straightened. Feet shifted a fraction. Eyes locked tighter on targets. It was as if a hidden machine inside them had started turning. Every other species in the room felt that shift. The air seemed to grow colder. The council chair leaned forward, sensing what was coming, but unable to stop it. The Drek commander barked an order to his guards. His voice was sharp, but carried a threat of fear. "Stand firm," he said. But even his soldiers were uneasy. Their breathing grew uneven. Their hands tightened on their weapons. Rian took a step forward. It was slow, deliberate, and calm. The sound of his boot against the floor echoed louder than the Drek commander's voice. The entire council chamber held its breath. The first Drek guard moved, trying to lift his weapon. Before the motion could finish, the human closest to him acted. It was not a wild strike. It was clean and fast. The guard's weapon was removed from his grasp, and he was forced to the ground with quiet precision. No shout came from the human. No cry of rage. Only silence. The second Drek tried to swing his weapon. Rian was already there. His hand caught the weapon mid-swing and twisted it away. His other hand pressed against the Drek soldier's chest, knocking him off balance. The guard fell without a sound, his weapon sliding across the floor. Panic began to grow in the Drek ranks. Their leader turned to retreat, but two more humans stepped in his path. Their faces were calm, their movements smooth. One Drek tried to fire, but his weapon was taken before the shot could be aimed. A loud clatter rang as it hit the floor. The council guards were frozen. They had trained for many kinds of conflict, but this was different. There was no shouting, no wild attack. Every human strike landed with the exact speed and power it needed. They were fighting like a single mind. The council chair finally spoke, his voice breaking the silence. "Stop this," he shouted. But even he knew he was too late. The humans were already in full control of the chamber. One Drek guard ran toward the exit, trying to escape. A human intercept unit blocked him with a single step. No punch, no kick, just a grip on the arm that sent him down. It was not violence for the sake of cruelty. It was a clean, controlled operation meant to end the threat fast. The Drek commander fell back toward the center of the chamber. His crest lowered, and his breathing grew heavy. He had thought the humans were weak because they spoke softly. He had thought they were slow because they waited. But now, as his soldiers were taken down one after another, he understood. This was why the Drek feared them. Rian stood directly in front of him now. He was not shouting. He was not smiling. He was simply looking at the commander with a gaze that made the Drek tremble. Around them, the human unit formed a circle. The council guards finally moved, surrounding the scene, but keeping their distance. They were trained to act, but none of them wanted to step between the humans and their target. The energy in the air felt too sharp, too precise. The Drek commander raised his claws. He tried to speak. "If you harm me, there will be war." His voice shook. Rian's head tilted slightly again. It was not a threat. It was a statement without words. Then Rian moved forward and placed one hand on the Drek's shoulder. His grip was firm but controlled. He did not strike. He did not harm. He simply pressed down with the quiet power of someone who knew exactly how much strength was needed. The Drek commander's knees bent under the pressure. All around them, the Drek soldiers were disarmed. Their weapons lay scattered on the floor. The humans had ended the fight in less than 10 seconds. The council chair stood from his seat. "Enough," he said loudly. "The chamber is secure." His voice was steady now. But in his eyes, there was something new. He had seen many battles. He had seen armies rise and fall, but this was different. The human unit did not look proud. They did not cheer. They simply returned to their calm stance, waiting for further orders. The Drek commander stared at them with wide eyes, unable to speak. Every other species in the chamber understood something that day. Humanity did not need to roar to show strength. They did not need to make grand threats. Their strength was quiet, focused, and absolute when their home was threatened. The council guards began collecting the Drek weapons. The Drek soldiers were restrained, their earlier confidence gone. Rian looked around the chamber once, then lowered his hand from the commander's shoulder. He stepped back, and his unit followed in perfect unison. The Drek commander fell to his knees fully now, breathing hard. His claws shook. He had not been struck with cruelty, yet he felt more fear than any wound could bring. The council chair turned to the Drek. "This is what you chose to provoke," said. His voice carried the weight of the moment. The humans waited in silence. Their faces were unreadable, their movements still precise. The chamber was theirs now. The Drek soldiers were escorted out. The council recorded everything. Many leaders present knew that the galaxy would speak of this day for generations. The silent moment when humanity's predator trigger was revealed would be remembered not because of bloodshed, but because of control. When the last Drek soldier was removed, Rian and his unit turned toward the council chair. He nodded once, a simple gesture of confirmation. Then they walked toward the exit as calmly as they had entered, as they disappeared down the corridor. Many species released the breath they had been holding. The silence left behind was heavier than any noise could have been. The council chamber had seen many forms of power before. But now, it understood why humanity was feared. It was not just strength. It was the way they turned into silent hunters the instant their home or people were threatened. No one in that chamber forgot the sight of it. Not the Drek, not the council guards, not the leaders who watched from their seats. They would remember the way the humans moved with perfect unity and no wasted motion. The council chamber was silent. Every seat was filled, every delegate present. The air felt thick with tension and curiosity. The event they had seen a few days ago still played in their minds like a living memory. The image of the human, Dan standing calm after dismantling the drones, had spread across every colony and star system that had a seat in the council. Many still debated what it meant. Some called it a threat, others called it proof that humans were protectors by nature. Vila, the head of the council, had not spoken much since that day. She spent hours in her private office, replaying the video. She slowed every frame, watching every move of the human's reaction. What shocked her was not the speed or strength, but the control. There had been no sign of hatred. The human's face showed focus, purpose, and calm. To Vela, that was even more frightening than rage. Rage was predictable. But calm power was something far more difficult to understand. The council meeting began with the sound of the chamber bell. Delegates from over 40 species sat ready. Vila stood and looked at the crowd before her. She said that the human representative would speak today. The chamber doors opened, and Dan entered wearing his simple Earth's uniform. He walked with quiet confidence, not pride. His movements were calm, as if he carried no burden from what had happened. Every eye followed him as he took his place in the center circle. The floor lit up with blue light to mark the focus point. Vela greeted him formally and thanked him for appearing before the council once more. Dan nodded and said he was ready to answer any question they had. The first delegate to speak was from the Zacher species. They were known for their logic and strict order. The Zacher representative asked Don to explain what had happened inside the test. He said the council needed to understand the cause behind his sudden violent reaction. Dan took a breath before answering. He said that what the council had seen was not a reaction born of anger, but of instinct. He explained that humans had a system deep inside their minds, something from their long history on a world full of danger. He said that long before humans had cities or ships, they had to face predators on their planet. Those predators were faster and stronger than them. To survive, humans had developed instincts that made them act with precision when danger came close. That old instinct, Dan said, still lived inside every human, even after thousands of years of peace. When the Zacher asked why this instinct had activated in a simple test, Don looked straight at him and said that it was not the test itself, but the insult. When the simulation mocked the fallen soldiers of Earth, his mind crossed a line. To him, it was no longer a game or study. It became real. That insult represented a deep threat to the honor and memory of those who had died protecting others. In that moment, his instincts decided to act. The council chamber fell silent again. Some delegates whispered among themselves. They were confused that something as simple as words could cause such a reaction, but others understood. For them, the idea of defending memory and loyalty was not strange. Still, the calmness in the human's face unsettled them. Vila asked Dan another question. She asked if humans could control this instinct, or if it could appear any time without warning. Dan replied that it could only appear under one condition. He said it only awakens when a human truly believes that something innocent or sacred is in danger. He said humans learn to control it through training, discipline, and moral understanding. He added that it was not something to be proud of or ashamed of. It was simply a part of what humans were. The Ural representative spoke next. His kind were small but intelligent, famous for their science. He asked if this predator trigger could be used as a weapon. Dan shook his head and said no. He said it could not be forced or activated by command. It was a natural process. Trying to use it as a weapon would only lead to chaos and failure. He explained that when the trigger activates, it is guided by purpose, not orders. Vela listened carefully. She could see that Dan was not trying to hide anything. His voice was honest and his words were calm. He was not defending himself. He was teaching them. That made her feel a mix of respect and unease. After hours of questioning, Vela closed the session. She thanked Dan and asked him to wait outside while the council discussed their conclusions. Don nodded and stepped out quietly. The heavy doors closed behind him. Inside the chamber, the debate began. The first to speak was the Zacher again. He said that humans were too dangerous to be trusted in shared operations. He proposed restrictions on human soldiers in mixed missions. The Ural disagreed. He said that humans' instinct could be a valuable asset in protecting colonies from real threats. The council soon divided into two sides. One saw humans as a risk. The other saw them as guardians. Vela remained silent as the argument grew louder. Finally, she raised her hand and told them to stop. She reminded them what they had seen. She said they had witnessed not chaos but control. She asked if any other species could stop in the middle of such a response as Dan did, once the danger was gone. She said that should tell them something important. The council listened as she continued. She said that humanity had once been feared because of their wars, but they had learned more from those wars than any other race. They had learned the meaning of peace and why it was precious. The predator trigger, she said, was not a sign of violence, but a memory of survival. It was a part of what allowed humans to grow into what they were now. By the end of the session, the council voted. The decision was clear. There would be no ban, no restriction. Instead, the council agreed to document the human instinct as a scientific and cultural phenomenon. The report would be called Predator Trigger, a human defense response. When Dan was called back inside, Vela told him of the decision. She thanked him for his honesty and said that the council now understood a little more about what it meant to be human. Dan replied that he was glad to share the truth. He said humans never wanted fear. They only wanted peace with strength, so that peace could last. After the meeting, Dan walked out of the council building into the open plaza. The twin suns of the capital world shone above. Around him, delegates and citizens from many races looked at him with mixed feelings. Some bowed in respect. Others stepped aside quietly. Don simply smiled and kept walking toward the transport dock where his team waited as he left. Vela stood by her window and watched his ship rise into the bright sky. She knew that what they had seen that day would echo for generations. She wrote in her personal log that the day humanity revealed its trigger, the galaxy learned two lessons. The first was that humans were still predators at heart. The second was that they had chosen to be protectors instead. Weeks later, the reports spread across the galaxy. On distant worlds, soldiers and scholars studied the event. Many races began to rethink their training and understanding of defense. Some tried to imitate human discipline, but none could recreate the same focus. It became clear that the trigger was not just biology. It was the soul of humanity's history, built from endless struggle and hope. Years passed, and the story became legend. In training academies across the stars, instructors would remind their students of that day. They would say, "Remember the calm human who moved faster than any machine. Remember the man who fought without hatred and stopped without pride." They would say, "Remember why even the fiercest predators choose peace until the line is crossed." Vela lived long enough to see the legend take root. Every time she saw the recording, she felt the same respect she had felt that first day. She knew that the galaxy was safer not because humanity was feared, but because they had chosen restraint. She believed that was what true strength looked like. And somewhere, far from the council worlds on a quiet human colony under blue skies, Don continued his service. He trained new peacekeepers, teaching them that strength without wisdom is nothing. He told them that their ancestors had once fought to survive, but now they must fight only to protect. His students listened and learned, carrying his words into every mission in the records of the Galactic Council. The event was marked as a turning point in history. It was the day the Council saw the truth about humanity. It was the day they saw the Predator trigger awaken without warning and return to calm with reason. It was the day fear turned into understanding, and so, across the stars, whenever someone spoke of humans, they no longer spoke only of warriors. They spoke of guardians who walked with quiet power, protectors who could become unstoppable when the innocent were in danger. That memory remained forever, written in the history of every world that once doubted Earth.